The best CFOs aren't running the back office, they're building the business, right there next to the founder and the CEO. Welcome to the CFO Track. I'm Tom Hunter, and each week I sit down with some of Australia's best CFOs to discuss what the role of the modern finance leader actually looks like and to set the standard for everyone that's coming up with them. Let's get into it. Today on the show, I'm speaking with Rebecca Lowde, the CFO of MYOB, one of Australia's most iconic accounting software businesses. Rebecca is genuinely one of Australia's best tech CFOs, and she shares what she learned from leading finance across the ASX, multinationals, and high-growth startups about ensuring that finance is always the enabler of growth, not business prevention. I hope you enjoy it, and here we go. This episode is brought to you by Tallystone.com, your AI company secretary and advisor. Delegate the grind and make key decisions with confidence. Find out more at tallystone.com/CFO Track. Rebecca Lowde, welcome to the CFO Track podcast.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. How's the week been?
Oh, busy. I'm actually in Southern Highlands at the moment and it's very cold. Yes, but anyway,
nice.
It's all good.
Do you get there often?
So we come down here most weekends and then in Sydney for the rest of the week. But it's that privilege of living between two places, so it's kind of good.
Yeah, how good. What's it doing there at the minute? What's the weather like?
It's sunny, but it's a very heavy frost, put it that way. And I noticed that one of our water feature things is frozen over, so it's cold.
Okay. Yeah, no. Fair enough. So I've already given the listeners a bit of an intro to you, but I can never do it justice. So it'd be great to hear it from yourself, a bit of overview of who you are, what you're doing at the minute, that sort of stuff.
Yep, sure. Currently the CFO at MYOB. You'll have seen from my history when I have been through multinationals and ASX listed and private equity backed now. And so I've had the privilege of working in multiple countries and really living a life through the finance lens, which has been amazing. So continuing to do that. Nice.
Well, we'll come back to present day in a bit, but it'd be good to understand what was it about finance that drove it for you? Like where did it come in?
It's an interesting one because I will admit that I didn't know what accounting was when I applied for it at uni. I had not necessarily done as well in school as I should have. I probably didn't listen as much as I should have.
Common theme, I think.
Yes, hindsight's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I loved numbers and I liked maths and I was quite good at maths. So that sort of seemed like a logical thing to apply for. So I applied for it, got into uni, but I also combined my degree with my with systems analysis and design. So I really loved the programming and IT side of things, but kind of felt there was more of a future in finance. So
right. Do you think that's
I certainly didn't dream of debits and credits, let me put it that way.
Do you think that's what's sowed the seeds of tech for you?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So this was my, I really enjoyed, I love the IT side of things, but I really think it does go well with finance. So my sort of perfect solution was I'll do finance, but I'd love to work in a tech company. And that kind of is literally how I decided that I wanted to go into tech companies.
Yeah. So you knew from day one?
Yeah, my father was a programmer and I'd been around tech all my life. Even at my age, we had computers. And so it was a no-brainer for me. What I didn't appreciate until later, probably how clever a decision that was for me, just because of the tech world and the changing environment and what you learn and all of those sorts of things. So accidentally landed into it, but it was best decision if it's a decision that I ever made.
Yeah. And so you took the role with Oracle at the time. So what was the tech space at that?
Well, actually, my very, very first role was Miracell, which was a distributor of tech products. But it was there that I met the finance director at Miracell, who then went to Oracle. And so I always say I grew up in Oracle. And he was the finance director, and I moved over there as the financial controller at the time in the Sydney office and working for Australia. But I think the thing about Oracle was I got to learn a lot. It was in the days when tech companies were not necessarily reporting as accurately as they should have been, and so there was a lot of focus on revenue recognition and all of that fun stuff. But what it taught me was that in the tech world, finance really does have a seat at the table because it needs to help the structuring of contracts so that you can get the best optimization of revenue and all of those sorts of things. So you got to see a lot more of the business side of things rather than just being in back office, which is such a horrible term. And then also in Oracle, I got to travel and work in Europe, which for someone in their 20s was pretty exciting.
Yeah. And so how did that come up? Because where did you go to? You're Vienna or something?
I was in Vienna, which is a strange place to do your first overseas gig. I literally was turning 30 and feeling like my life was over and that I was getting old. And so went and did a European trip. I had a child at the time, went and did a European trip. Awesome. And while I was there, I got a call from Oracle in Vienna that was responsible for all of the Nordics.
So you quit?
No. I was on a holiday for 3 months. I just happened to get a phone call. Somebody had told somebody that I was traveling. I have no idea how it all happened. I got this phone call to come over for an interview. So it seemed like a good idea at the time. So I went and had an interview with the finance director based in Vienna, and he offered me a job on the spot and and told me I could choose between living in Vienna, Switzerland or London. And all ideas when on holiday seemed like a really good idea. So Vienna seemed like a really good idea. So I moved to Vienna.
Yeah. What was the decision between the three? Because they're all pretty good options.
They are. Vienna was just, I don't know, I'd just done my first European traveling around countries and I just loved Vienna. To me, it was a clean Paris, which is probably an insult to Paris. But it was just, and it had so much history. Yeah. It just, I don't know, it was just a place you fell in love with when I traveled. So I thought it would be awesome to live there. Did underestimate not speaking the language and all of those sorts of things. So that was fun. But it was actually just a base. I was more about working in all of the other countries around. So every Monday I used to fly to either Switzerland or the Nordics or Central Eastern Europe. And so I got to see a lot of Europe on Oracle's money, which is not a bad thing.
And so how did you find it early days? What was the role like? What was things like, challenges, all that sort of thing?
It was interesting and I was probably naive, which is not a bad thing because I think you can overthink things sometimes. Culturally, very, very different. And Europe is obviously a bunch of countries like Asia is. And so you can't just say it's a European culture. It's very different by country. I ultimately also moved to Dublin to implement the shared service centre, so dealt with all those countries in a very different way. And I think the biggest learning for me, and probably something I've taken through my whole career, is just appreciating how different people are, and that whilst Australians can be very to the point and very decisive, isn't necessarily how you get the best out of people in different countries. And so I learned more about people probably than accounting. And I also learned about change management because we're implementing a shared service centre, which comes with emotion and people, losing jobs and what have you. And so change management also became a really big thing. And if you think about all the things you learn in life, change is just something that people don't. Like some people thrive on, some people just get very scared by it. And so it just taught me a lot at a very young age about how to help people get to where they need to get to and how to interact with people in the ways that they need you to rather than how you think you should. So...
Yeah, nice. Shared services then are tricky at the best of time because they are a melting pot, even if they are from in the same country, right? So how did you navigate that?
It was interesting because we were literally centralising all of European operations into Dublin. So you were going into like a country and saying, hi, thanks, we're going to standardise and centralise all the processes and I need your help to do it. But by the way, you don't have a job at the end of it. So, a bit difficult. And that's why I say that change was so important. So it was probably one of the most challenging jobs because you are dealing with people. But I was very much learning then about processes and standardization and the importance of all of that around efficiency. And so it was a lot of amazing learning. It was an amazing project. It taught you that it needed to have executive sponsorship. You can't just go in and think the change will happen just because you say it needs to. So it was hard, but rewarding. Like I don't think you ever wake up in a day and get an email to say, thanks for taking my job. I think you get emails to say all the reasons why it's not going to work. And so you learn to, you learn to work with people, I think.
Yeah. And so that was the same time as moving across the world with a family as well. How do you manage those pressures at the same time?
Oracle were amazing. Even back in those days, they really supported it. And you know, I had a 3-year-old daughter that used to travel with me to places. And, you know, I had a husband at the time that was working, we're helping and working as well. So I'm very routine oriented. And so as long as everything sticks to my routine, we're all good.
And then when it doesn't?
When it doesn't, it's not all that great. But luckily I had this child, so we're all good.
Yeah, okay, nice. And at what point did you know it was time to come home?
We'd been in Dublin. I underestimated the greyness and the coldness.
Sure.
It is exhausting after a couple of years of doing a shared service implementation. I wanted to go back to Australia. I still had family there, obviously. So we went back, and I actually went back with Oracle. And then decided that I was getting too Oracleized and needed to go find some other job somewhere else. And actually, I wanted to sell something tangible. I wanted to software is a license to use. So I went to Lexmark, which was printers, and it was in the time when printers and I'm really showing my age, printers and photocopiers were starting to merge into one, and you had the multifunction devices. So it was an exciting time for that industry as well. And so I went and worked there, and then had the opportunity to be taking on the Asia Pacific role. And so I went to Singapore. So whilst I went back to Australia because I wanted to go back, once you've done it once, you kind of get itchy feet to keep moving. So so I then went to Singapore with Lexmark, and then ultimately ended up with Business Objects, which was a business intelligence software company. So I did go back to software.
Reeled you back in, couldn't get away from tech. And so is that's sort of aligned with SAP then in the end, because they acquired Business Objects.
They acquired Business Objects, So that was in the days when all the business intelligence companies were getting consolidated. So you were always going to be bought by an SAP or an Oracle or one of those. And so we were acquired by SAP. I stayed with SAP for about a year as their COO, and that was to help amalgamate the two companies, so to integrate the workings, but also Business Objects was a consumer-based as well as an enterprise-based product. And so SAP was obviously very enterprise-focused. So there was also a lot of trying to help them understand how to be also consumer-facing and how to get that sales model to work. So I got to do a lot of working around the sales model and the operational side of things, handed finance over pretty quickly so that finance had their home and could continue to progress, and then took on all the operational side before coming back to Australia again.
Yeah, right. So being on the inside through an acquisition like that, because the change management piece then is huge at the same time. So is there anything you took from your time in Vienna and Ireland to be able to bring that through from a
honesty and transparency. I think at the time, Business Objects was a very large acquisition for SAP. And so they were also learning how to do integration and what have you. And I think, one of the biggest learnings of being on that side, so having been bought rather than being the ones that is doing the buying, is just the communication's key. And I know it's a very simple thing to say. It's actually a hard thing to do well. And so, people are always fearful of change. They're fearful of their jobs. They're fearful of their future. So you need to help them. And my theory about handing finance over so quickly was the team needed to know that they had a home and where they played and who were their colleagues and how they were all going to fit in. And so I think the quicker you can integrate, the better. Unless they're always going to be run separately, that's different. But if they are going to integrate, I think the quicker you do that, the better people then can start to just move on and embrace what they've got. So and keeping people, in the know of what's exactly happening, why it's happening, give them context, all of those sorts of things, I think.
Yeah, okay. And then again, Singapore is another massive melting pot of cultures. Did you find anything specifically different from a European hub?
Yeah, yes. I mean, the same concept, culturally very different, people very different, bunch of countries. Japan, I'd never worked in before, and Japan was part of my remit, and that was probably, out of all the countries I've worked in, probably the biggest learning for me. Culturally, Japan's very different. Very hardworking. Not that everybody else isn't, but they're very hardworking. The model is different as far as how ownership happens at an entity level, so that's a little bit different. But it's more about, you don't go in and just tell people what to do. And you also need to appreciate the difference with the Western style and Western management and the impact that can have on people. And so it's very much about building trust, building relationships, and taking time. And that's not necessarily how we typically approach things. Exactly. And building trust and allowing people to save face and understanding, giving them context around why decisions are made, and realizing that whilst they're listening, they're not going to give you anything in the room. They will come back to you later. It's a big learning, huge learning, but great. I mean, I get to go to Japan a lot, so it was great. So can't ask for more.
And you took on CFO/COO role at the same time. So that was your first, in a sense, CFO role.
Yes, it was. And it was still within the multinational environment. So you still had the safety net of the parent company. And that became more pronounced when I moved into ASX roles as to what that means. But it's still very P&L focused. It's still around sales and revenue, right? So it was, but it was interesting because I had finance directors reporting to me. So you've got a different management style then, because you're managing managers. You're not managing individual contributors typically. And you're managing finance directors in their own countries that know the culture better than you do, know the go-to-market model better than you do. So it was, again, it's all learning, right? It's all just sort of working out how to get the best out of that. And, one of the things I was really particular about was finance people being involved and having a seat at the table. And so all my finance directors had to go on a certain number of sales calls every quarter, which I'm not sure if that upset the salespeople more or the finance people more, but it meant that they got to hear from a customer. It's very easy to sit there and say no to something. It's very hard to say no to a customer. It was, and there's all different sales models depending on which country you're talking about in Asia. So there was a lot of learnings around helping finance bridge that gap between doing transactional, which we all have to do, but then doing the whole value add and being that true business partner and truly understanding why we do things in a certain way and what the customers need from the product and from the company itself.
And what do you think your team got out of that by making them go into those calls?
You got to live in the life of a salesperson. It's a really hard job. Like, we all pick on salespeople, but it's a really hard job. And so I think they got to live in the shoes of someone else and appreciate that when a question came to you around how you needed to structure a contract or something like that you now understood the perspective of the customer and why those questions were coming, whereas before the questions were always out of context. So I think, I hope that they got to learn that side of things. It certainly helped me.
And how critical do you think that is for a finance professional? Because you do, like you said, you do get stuck in your lane to an extent. You just see the numbers as just numbers, but you don't really think about what that impacts either the people that's in your team, what the actual revenue numbers might be going forward, and how that impacts business outcomes. So how impactful do you think that is for finance people as a whole?
So I don't think you can do your job as well without it, to be completely honest. I think, the reason I love the finance role or the CFO role so much is that you get to see across an entire organization. Not every role gets to see that. You do very much stay in your own swim lanes. And whereas finance, you get to see a decision, that someone makes over here as to how it impacts over here, whether it be something to do with the product development lifecycle or whether it's to do with the sales process. And so understanding all of that, I think, helps you then learn how to tell the story of what the numbers are actually saying, because looking at a P&L, it's a P&L. Like, it doesn't tell you everything. Whereas being able to translate that into metrics and forward-looking information to really understand where the business is going, that's where you can add value. And who better to do that than someone that knows and lives and breathes the P&L? So to me, it gives you the operational side of the financial side to be able to bring them together, and then that's how you work out where the business is heading, the financial health of the company, or what you should be worried about, or whether the product's the right product. Like, it's all encompassing. To me, it's critical.
Yeah, that's fair. And so what prompted the move back home?
That was me wanting to come home and do an ASX listed role. Not quite sure what that theory was, but my idea was I'd done multinationals. I wanted to be a listed CFO. Again, didn't think it through. So again, not a bad thing. And what I didn't realize also was how hard the transition is to make from multinational to CFO, as in when you're going for the roles, a lot of people think that because you've only ever done multinational, you wouldn't necessarily understand the listed environment. And there's an element of truth to that, but it doesn't mean you can't learn it. And so my very first ASX role was with Bravura Solutions, who were actually looking for a CFO that had international experience, because a large part of their profit was coming from the UK. And so I got a look in, probably because even though I didn't have the listed experience, because I'd come from an international background. And so I got the role, and whirlwind of learning what ASX meant. And I think whilst it should never scare you off, I think going in with your eyes wide open might have been better for me than what I did. Because it is different. It is very different. There's no parent to call when things get tough, because you are that parent. And the balance sheet, which to me is the most important financial statement, because it's where all the secrets get kept, that becomes more important. And so understanding your banking covenants, which I will admit I did need to Google the first time, because I wasn't quite sure what that meant. And all of those sorts of things. And, it was the financial crisis had just hit, and we needed to recapitalize the company. And these were all things I'd never done before. So all of a sudden, and there's no one to call. So you literally got your team and you work through it. So it was a huge learning curve, a great learning curve. And we were successful. And, I stayed there, 5-6 years. And, we ultimately privatized at some point in the future. But it was a great experience, because we recapitalized by bringing private equity in onto the register. Having a mix of private equity and listed is difficult, because, your shareholders need to make sure that you're doing everything for the benefit of all shareholders, not just the private equity. And so it's the investor relations side of it becomes really critical, because you need to build relationships with all the shareholders and need to get them to believe in the direction of the company and not think that it is just purely from a PE perspective. So it was, again, from my point of view, it was exciting, because my CEO ultimately was in the UK. I got to do most of the investor relations stuff. And, we transformed the company from a loss-making to profit-making, and brought new products to market. And, it was in a wealth management software industry, so quite tough, very regulated. But again, learning all the time.
And so you're saying that the bank covenant stuff before. So when you're coming in and you're unsure what something is, do you tell people, or do you just go and Google yourself, or how did you work through that?
See, this depends on your ego, I think. My ego doesn't necessarily let me tell people I don't know what I'm doing. So, so I Googled a lot. I did have an amazing general counsel that I worked with. She was in my team. We built a really strong relationship. She helped me enormously.
Awesome.
I'm also a very strong believer in surrounding yourself with all sorts of people that can do things that you can't. And if you have a team of brilliant people around you, you can only be successful. So I was lucky to have a great team. And so, yes, you kind of admit you don't necessarily know it to a point. Use a lot of Google. Now I could use AI if it was nowadays. But it's a bit of both, learning yourself but not, because the other thing is also people are relying on you to make decisions, and they're relying on you to be not having stress and making sure that everything's going okay. And so there's a fine line between, admitting certain things.
Well, I think it's just a good example that regardless of what level, there's always things you don't know, right?
Oh my God, yeah. I learned that the hard way. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you were there for a while. We just say five and a bit years, and privatised the business at the time.
Yep. So we ended up privatising towards the end of my tenure. I didn't want to stay once it was privatised. I think I'd done enough. Sure. The main reason for privatising was there were just a bunch of things that needed to be completed with building products, easier to do it behind a closed door. The company had got itself to a really good position from a cash flow perspective, and so it just seemed like the right time. Now, obviously, it's since gone public again, so it's that normal evolution of a company. Get private equity involved, it privatizes, it then lists again. So, but it's been successful. So it was a great learning ground for me, and it meant that a stepping stone into other ASX listed roles as well, which was great.
So is that the main reason for the mechanics behind why you would do it, and what's leading up to the decision making behind privatising it, the ability to have a bit more freedom?
Yeah, and it depends on the company. So yes, it allows you to make mistakes and potentially reinvest back into the company more than potentially you could do on the register.
Fine.
It's a balancing game between what's right for the shareholders versus what's right for the company, and so you don't do it lightly because it's a expensive process. And our register was getting more and more private equity owned, so the private equity holding went from 30% to 60% to 70%. So it made sense.
Yeah.
Would it be a different reason for different companies? Probably. It would depend on what it is that they were trying to achieve.
Right. Is it as difficult or as complex as it sounds doing it, the process of it? Like, what's the mechanics that go into it?
So you have to do a scheme of arrangement. You've got to get all your shareholder votes. You've got to do a whole bunch of reporting to show that it's in the best interests of the shareholders. It's being done for the right reasons. It's the same as if you're buying something. I mean, it's the same process. Or if you're IPOing, it's just the other way around. But it is really about a transparent process and helping people understand the reasons behind it, the benefits that they'll achieve. But the most important thing is to make sure that you are doing it for the right reasons in the best interests of all shareholders.
A quick one before we get back to it. If you're listening to this podcast, you probably already know that I recruit for senior finance professionals for high growth businesses. That's what I do outside of this show. And my approach is built around storytelling. When I take on a search, I build a narrative around the business, who they are, what they're building, where they're going, and why that role matters. Before I reach out to a single candidate, I tell that story across multiple channels to my network of over 28,000 finance professionals in Australia, so that when I do start conversations, candidates already know who you are and there's a level of buy-in before I even contact them. So if you're a founder, CEO or CFO that's thinking about a finance hire, even if it's early days, I'm always happy to chat, whether that's a question, some free advice, or a sense check on what the market looks like. You can find me on LinkedIn or at storyrecruitment.com.au. All right, let's get back into it.
And then when did the Salmat role come up?
So I got a call about that one as privatisation had finished, and I got a call about Salmat. And this again was me deciding that, let's do something different. Salmat wasn't your stock standard, tech company. It had a multitude of different businesses. So it had three very distinct businesses. It was letterbox delivery. I think everybody's delivered a catalogue at some time in their childhood. So there was letterbox catalogue delivery. There was contact centres, and then there was the e-commerce platforms as well. And they don't really go together, those three businesses. So there's not really synergies there, but they were all under the one company, being managed differently because the go-to-market model's different, the capital structure's different, but they were all under the one banner. Salmat was a iconic Australian company, had been around for 35, 40 years. The two founders were still there at that time. Peter Maddock was the chair of the board. Phil Salter, unfortunately, was unwell and eventually passed away. But but it was ASX listed. It was, it had sold off half its business not that long before I took on the role, and it just needed to know what it wanted to be. And it was, it had defocused and it was dabbling in a whole bunch of different things. It was, the shareholders were losing confidence. I guess the share price had gone down. When they divested the large part of the business, there was a bunch of things that weren't necessarily as expected. And so it was going through a reinvention of itself, I guess. And so the management team were pretty much changed over. So there was a new CEO, there was myself as a new CFO, there was a new head of people.
Right.
There was a new head of IT as well. So, I think we're all new. And so I went in as CFO, and the whole idea around initially was just to get an understanding of product profitability, get an understanding of where we were making money, where we weren't making money, what was the right things to focus on, how did they work together, all of those things. It had a really old ERP system. Reporting was difficult. Things just needed transforming and I guess almost just bringing into the new world. So that was my role as CFO. What became apparent through that was that the company, the three different business units really didn't go hand in hand, and the shareholders were not necessarily wanting to reinvest. The letterbox business was a duopoly with a massive race to the bottom. And contact centers have very small margins. And so it was just hard. And myself and the COO at the time, so he was also new, came up with this idea that actually there was more value in some of the parts than there was in the company in its entire value. And the market cap had plummeted. And so we went to the board, or to the founder first, and then to the board with a strategy around how to get value from the sum of all parts, i.e. break the company up. Took a while to get a founder to think about that.
Sell that baby.
But ultimately it was the right answer. And we put together a really good plan on how we would do it. The CEO at the time wasn't really what he'd signed up for, so he ended up leaving and the board offered me the CEO role. So all of a sudden I've gone from being CFO, where I was quite comfortable, to being offered a CEO role, which I had never contemplated doing. However, my ego would never let me say no. So so I took the role and became the CEO.
Was it an instant yes, or was it, not so sure?
No, instant yes. No, because I had this idea, and this is one of my learnings for anyone else that's listening. I had this idea that CEOs had to be these extroverted, I don't know, can walk and talk and go on a stage and kiss babies and do all that sort of stuff and be completely and utterly extroverted, which is not me. And so I didn't think I was the right person. But the more I thought about it, the more I wanted to prove that I was the right person. And what was fascinating, and to this day I'll never forget, just sort of realizing that the very first time I stood up at a town hall as the CEO, now everyone knew me as a CFO. I will tell you there's a difference. When you hop in the lift with the CFO, people put their faces down and don't actually talk to you. If you hop in the lift with the CEO, they all say hi. So all of a sudden people started saying hi. And so I stood up in front of the team and admitted that, this was a really hard decision. I'm not a extroverted person. All I can promise is that I will always be as open and honest as I possibly can, remembering it's a public environment, and that I'm going to make mistakes, and I just would like people to help me get through them. And it was amazing the response I got. I was surprised. Yeah, that's good.
How long did the decision take you?
I do make decisions quite quickly. But it was only it was probably about a week actually of me going up and down and roundabout and telling
myself. Overnight.
No, it wasn't overnight. God, no.
Yeah. So what are the pros and cons in that type of decision? Because there must have been points where you're like really not sure, and like, how do you get to that? Because I'm sure there's plenty of people going through not necessarily that scale of decision, but for them in their own context, it's equally important.
Yeah, biggest lesson: forgive yourself. You're allowed to be who you are, and you don't have to conform to certain ideas that you may have. People always talk about the imposter syndrome and all of those sorts of things. They're real. Yeah. They're very real. And I think I was given a coach to help me transition to the CEO role. I'd never had a coach, and anyone that knows me knows that I am not great with authority. So it took me a lot to open up to the coach. But the biggest learning that I got from that was it's okay to be you, and it's okay to ask for help. And I think the older I got, the more forgiving I got, that I'm introverted. I don't like walking in a room of people, but that's actually okay. And I think, and that's the most important thing, I think, for any person coming up. Surround yourself with people with brilliance, make yourself successful through working really well with others, and just be who you are. It's not a bad thing. And it sounds so easy, but it's actually really hard. And so I think the older you get, the easier it gets to say, actually, this is me and I can't change. But
sure. No, it's an important lesson, though. It's like
it is.
You can't. Yeah.
No, you can't. I remember I used to try. I used to think I can be quiet and I can be extroverted, and it's exhausting. So there's no point. But it was a great job. I mean, I had fun for 3 years as CEO. We did end up selling off each of the components of the business. People kept their jobs. We ultimately wound down the company. So myself and the CFO were the last two standing. We wound the company down.
Turn the lights off on the way out.
Exactly. And I tell you what, I learned all my bookkeeping skills all over again. So, it was another great learning, but also successful. And it was the right thing for the company. It was the right thing for the people, and it was the right thing for the shareholders. And I think if you can say that, then that's a good thing. So yeah, it was 5 years of selling and winding up.
Yeah. Would you do it again? The CEO role? Is that on the horizon again?
No, it was funny when we had sort of done the last piece, I sat with my coach and said, I need to know what I want to be when I grow up. And I didn't honestly know whether I wanted to be a CEO or a CFO. And so she put me through this exercise of, what is it that got me excited? What was it that caused me to be exhausted? Like, what did I thrive on? All of those sorts of things. And that's when I realized I think the CFO role is an amazing role. I think that it adds so much value without the loneliness of being a CEO. And I think, the most important part of being a CFO is your relationship with the CEO. And I think that I just think I'm better in that role. And I'm more comfortable in that role. So I've proven I can do the CEO. So I'm not doing it again.
And so how did Afterpay come up? Because they were going nuts at the time.
That's another call I got. So once we were wound down, I was obviously looking for my next challenge. I got a call about Afterpay. So it's in COVID as well, so a little bit difficult. Afterpay had just started going, as you said, gangbusters. Everybody was in COVID doing online shopping.
How early were you with them?
So they were already listed when I went there. Okay. So they were listed.
Did they already have a CFO?
There was a previous CFO. He had stepped away. Anthony and Nick, who were the two founders, Anthony had taken over the CEO role about 6 months before that. And it was obviously growing at exponential rates. And it had a register that was predominantly US, actually. I think it was over 50% US. And so and tech companies in Australia are not necessarily as understood as they are in the US. And it was your classic tech company, right? It wasn't making any money, but it was growing over 100% year on year, and its market cap was ridiculous. So, so it was quite a difficult one for the Australian market to truly understand. And I think you either loved or hated Afterpay. I'm not, some people didn't necessarily like the idea of credit, and we'll tell you all the reasons as to why actually it was a positive. And it was first in its type, and so the regulatory landscape hadn't caught up either. Anyway, so I came in to help it grow up somewhat. It was growing, as I said, over 100%. It was 6 years or 5 years old. It was now we just hit the top 20 ASX listed, so huge expectations on the company. And top 20 ASX needs a lot of governance and maturity, which it didn't have, and nor should it. And so it was looking at what were its options. Was it to continue to do what it was doing? Was it to keep expanding into different countries? Was it to IPO in the US? Was it to, all those different options came up. But more importantly, was also just getting some systems and tools and processes in place, because they were lacking. It was your classic startup that threw people at a problem, and people everyone that worked there loved working there. And so they just would do anything to make it successful, which is great, but not scalable. So there was a lot of work being done on that. We did a convertible note raising, which was 1.5 billion, which was one of the largest Australia had done. That was fun. And then we used those funds to do a whole bunch of things with the US subsidiaries. So there was a lot of expansion in the US happening, in the UK, Spain, just done an acquisition in Spain. So there's a lot happening, you could say. The founders were the most amazing, humble, nice human beings that you would ever meet in your life. Anthony was just phenomenal to work with, because he's just so quick on his feet with numbers, and you couldn't keep up, but it was fine because you were learning. And then Nick was just this amazing salesperson that understood what the market needed. And so it was just a great place to be. And then ultimately the Block opportunity happened, as everybody now knows, and we did a transaction with Block for a significant sum of money, which again was the largest transaction in corporate history in Australia. We did an 11-week due diligence process. It was probably one of the best kept secrets, because nobody even within the company knew what was going on. COVID helped, because you could hide at home and no one knew what you were doing. But it was 2 years of, I don't think I've ever worked so much in my entire life, but it was such an adrenaline rush that it wasn't until it all was over that you realized, I think, just how much effort had taken.
How crazy it was, So obviously, that particular is quite unique, but the problem of process not following growth in startups is just classic, right? So how do you one, implement that when they're wanting to invest in other areas, like product or growth or whatever? How do you get them on that journey? And then what does that role of finance play for not just guardrailing growth, but actually facilitating and being a catalyst for it? Because it's a hard role to play.
It is a hard role to play. Great skill to learn, though, because what you never want to be is business prevention. You always want to be an enabler of growth for the right reasons, and profitable growth is important. It was interesting with the process side of things, because people do think process is a dirty word and it's bureaucracy, and why would you want to do all of that? And which is so not correct. And I think we implemented a PMO function, and an operational excellence function is what we ended up calling it. So I had a head of operational excellence that we put into place. And it was actually, to be honest, getting some quick wins to show the company that actually, if we have an efficient process over here, the agility that the company has is enormous. It's not hindering you, it's actually helping. But it's proving that out, because the moment you prove out that once, you get the credibility to do it again and again and again. And so we picked a couple of process areas that just made sense and showed what great looked like. And that got people, I mean, there's always going to be people that say they don't like process, but but it really helped. Our entire finance organisation all of a sudden were able to process things. We'd implemented a HR system that meant that we actually had better grip on our people and were able to do wellness programs as well, because I was also head of people then, which is kind of an odd combination. Weird. So there was a lot. So it's really, I think it's about proving it out. Get your quick wins, show people the benefits, and then help them along that journey. And I think it takes time and credibility, but once you've got that, I think then you just keep going and people will start to see the benefits from it. And they did in Afterpay. I really, truly think they did. But that also then means that you've got to be really careful that you're not investing so much over there that you then don't have growth. So one of the things that Afterpay did really well was invest in data and analytics. A lot of decisions were made very much based on data, which to me is my natural thing. I'll go to data before I'll sort of just, you always need a gut reaction, but you also need to understand the data and what it's telling you. And so there was a lot of making sure that when we were investing, we understood what we were investing in and what we truly thought the return was going to be. So there was, in quick discussions, not massive business cases that took forever to bring together, but really just understanding how it all would pan out. And then you get to help enable all of that because, again, finance gets to see all this stuff. So if we're sitting there and realizing that, the demographic of Afterpay is a 34-year-old female buying a pair of jeans, then great. Let's work on that and then work out how you can keep expanding on that. And so I think it's key. You went back to that original question you asked me, do I think people need to understand beyond finance about sales and all of those? Yeah, because then you can help growth. Because then all of a sudden your opinion may have a different perspective, but it's still an opinion that's educated and can show you where things could go and how growth can happen. The other thing is also a conscious decision to fail fast if you're going to fail. So that's also another learning when you've got high growth. It's okay to make mistakes, just admit them and move on. So that's also a really important lesson to learn.
And so the DD process would have been pretty intense at the time as well, because fair bit going on with the US.
It was fun at 4 o'clock in the morning, I can assure you. So and we only had a very small team. I had the most amazing head of tax at Afterpay, and I remember sitting in one of the DD meetings where there was like 70 people across from us and myself and her. And I did point out
in the one room, or is this virtual?
All on Zoom, because remember they're all based in the US, and because it was COVID, it was like doing a transaction on Zoom because we did not meet any of them face to face through the entire transaction because of COVID. It wasn't till much later that people actually got to meet people in person, but. It was always on Zoom, but you would see all these sea of faces, and my head of tax was just phenomenal. So
cool. Probably makes it a little bit easier rather than just sitting at this one long table with 70 people on the other side.
Yes, I think Zoom had its benefits. And at 4 o'clock in the morning, you can airbrush yourself to make yourself even look better. So it was great.
Sure. And so going from that, what prompted the move to MYOB? How did that all come up?
So again, it's software. It's accounting software. What more could you ask for being accounting software? It's another iconic Australian company. It was private equity. I'd never done 100% private equity owned. And so there was just a bunch of interesting nuances there. And so the company had been doing a lot over the previous few years around converting from desktop to cloud from a product perspective, as everybody knows. Xero came into the market. MYOB's been an iconic Australian company, but Xero was cloud native and took it by storm. And so MYOB was doing all of that transition and had not really grown much in the previous years. Innovation wasn't uppermost. So we came in to help revive the sort of growth profile of the company and help it just get back into innovation and where it needs to be. And at the same time, AI has obviously taken the world by storm. MYOB has really embraced that internally and from a customer point of view. And so look, it's exciting. It's not a long-term thing for me. This was really just to come in and do certain things. I kind of figure I'm old enough now that I've probably got one more in my career that I need to go and do something else challenging. So we'll see where that leads.
Yeah.
But
Cool.
But it's accounting software. What more could you ask for? Seriously.
What sort of stuff is the business working on at the minute? Like, what can listeners look forward to that might be coming?
Look, I think there's a couple of things. I mean, obviously, MYOB's product is getting AI enabled. There's lots of functionality being built into it. We had Solo come to market, which is specifically for sole traders. We have the Acumatica product suite, which is all around the mid-market. So it does have a great profile from sole trader to mid-market that it can fulfill. Flair was an acquisition that was done, which is all around the employee and benefits, which is also doing really well. But from an internal point of view, the thing that I think has been amazing is watching the company embrace AI from the point of view of enabling its team to be able to learn it. Like, it's one thing to say that, you can cut costs because of AI. It's an interesting concept. But to say that you can enable someone to be able to actually do all the repeatable tasks and let them, move into the more what I would call fun stuff has been amazing to watch. But even just purely from an individual's point of view, that there's not a lot of people that give you tools to play with and say, go and play with them and learn. So, so we've been able to do that. And we've got this whole concept of AI every day. Everybody needs to use it. Everyone needs to be comfortable with using it because, it's change, right? People get scared of things they don't know. So,
and how do you do that at a scale of the business of yourselves? Because it's very easy in startups just to plug stuff into Claude and go for it and away you go. But with that level of layers, it's hard.
We've got an incredible CTO that has helped build all the guardrails around everything. So it's been very well managed from that point of view. We also are managing it from a cost point of view. But what we've done is everybody's got as one of their goals that they have to use AI in a certain way every day.
Wow.
We've also got a whole team of AI evangelists, really, that go around and sort of build agents and help people work out what they need to do. We did 2 days of training where every single person in the company was tools down for 5 hours for those 2 days each. And they were able to attend a whole bunch of different sessions.
Awesome.
And it was by choice which sessions they wanted to do. And we're rolling things out. Like, if I look at my finance team, some of the guys have been given Claude so that they can have a look at how to do management reporting differently. Or we had a presentation from one of the ladies in accounting who had built an agent to do her prepayment journal that used to be a pain in the neck, that was taking her 5 hours just to do her journal. It now takes her 5 minutes. And she was presenting
is she building that off her own bat? Or
she did, yeah. She said she almost gave up. She thought it was so hard.
What did she use? Do you know?
I'm assuming it was built in Glean, because we use Glean and we also use Claude.
Okay, cool.
And a whole bunch of different things. But it was fascinating listening to her, because she did a showcase for the rest of finance where she was talking about the fact that it was hard. Like, she didn't really know what she was doing, and she wanted to give up when it kept failing on her, but she didn't. And now she has this agent that she's built that does her prepayment journal.
That's awesome.
Great. So imagine if you could do that for all your boring journals. So,
and that's legitimately rare too for your scale, because that's often the issue. Like, I can't do it because of X, Y, Z. I can't do that, but it's obviously not the case.
No, and it's great. But it's also great just for them as people. Like, forget MYOB for a second, just in your own skill set, because it's here to stay. And if you're not curious enough to learn, I think it's going to be really hard in the future. So, so I thought it was great. I was very jealous.
Yeah, awesome. And so, so where do you think things are going from more of a tech landscape or finance landscape over the next few years?
It'd be interesting to watch. I think we all know the stats that finance graduate numbers are way down. Personally, I don't understand that, because it's the best thing you can do. But we're seeing those stats have come down. I think there's a lot of fear out there that there's certain disciplines that can be replaced. That's yet to be proven. I think what can certainly be done is enhanced. And exactly like I said about a journal, imagine not having to spend 5 hours doing a journal, but you could spend 5 hours working out that you've actually got the right numbers in the right place, telling the right story.
100%.
So I think that becomes, finance is already progressing. It's not just pure, once upon a time called bean counters, it's not pure transactional. It is moving into the value-added advisor space. I think it's really important that the younger, and now I'm sounding old, the younger generation do embrace these things, stay curious. Like when I started out, it was ERP systems that we're going into the cloud, and it was all very exciting and scary, and everybody's jobs were going to go. Well, guess what? They didn't go, and they were just enhanced. And it's the same thing here. And so I think it's remain curious, keep learning, embrace it. It's here to stay. And if you can get on the forefront of it, it's got to be great for you personally.
For sure. And I think finance is one of those ones that will need the human in the loop. It's not something that can come completely autonomous. You do need some level of human in there to sense check it and make sure.
Highly regulated. Like when you've got highly regulated landscapes, you can't, like, yes, you can have enhancements and enablement, but you still need the human supervision or the human insights or the human sort of saying, actually, this is okay. So yes, we may have been managing, 10 humans before, and now all of a sudden we've got agents and the human race, but it's not going to go. You can't just get all of a sudden all of your financials just done just like that. It's just not going to work like that. And I think that's the fear factor that you hear a lot. And so I think it's what I'm really pleased about what we're doing is actually giving people the skills, because once you have the skills, you're less scared of the change.
For sure. And it's equipping them so they feel less vulnerable, they're ready to and equipped to be able to take that next step, even if it's in MYOB or elsewhere or whatever, they're in a position to be able to make that choice.
It's kind of fun, really.
Yeah. So I think that's as good a time as any, Rebecca, but you've been fantastic. I think you genuinely are one of Australia's best tech CFOs, and I think a lot of people listening to this would probably agree. So if anyone has any questions or they want to follow up or just get some more insight from you, you open to fielding a chat?
Of course. No problem at all.
Where would the best be?
Surround yourself with brilliance, and you are brilliant yourself. Well, you can't do that if you don't help people along the way. And one of the best things about finance is watching people develop and go into different roles. So definitely.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the CFO Track. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with a friend. I'll see you next time.